Hi guys, this is Jan for Chess24. We keep covering the Grand Prix, and today's game of the day is Leinier Dominguez from Cuba against our friend Peter Svidler from Russia, played in the 7th round of the Grand Prix. Leinier Dominguez might not be all that well known to everybody. He's been a very strong player for a long time, more than a decade. He's never made it quite into the top 10 and stayed there for a long time. He was very close like a year ago. He had great results, or bit more than that maybe. After that he lost some rating, but it looks like he's once again in good shape and working his way back up in this tournament. After 6 rounds he's on 3.5 out of 6 and has played some good chess. Peter Svidler also had a great tournament so far, has 4 out of 6. I've criticized him enough here for having chances to even score more points, but he's looked very strong in this tournament. And let's see how the two fared against each other. Dominguez had white, as he always does against Svidler. It seems like it's their 5th or 6th encounter in a row where Dominguez has the white pieces and the players tend to discuss the Ruy Lopez. Same thing today, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. Of course, Dominguez knows full well that Svidler is not a fan of the Berlin Wall, which has discouraged many white players from even going 1e4 or entering the Ruy Lopez. But Svidler has always favored the classical move, which also happens to be my favorite, the move a6, bishop a4, and knight f6 here. I took an interest in this game not only because it's a good game, but also because I'm very interested in the opening line that's played. This is the classical Ruy Lopez. Svidler decides to go d6 this time around. Black always has a choice here between castles and d6. They often transpose into each other. Of course, castles keeps the option open of going c3, d5, but also opens the door for some slightly unpleasant anti-martial systems like the move a4 here or the move d4 here, while d6 supposedly avoids some of them. Sorry, my voice became a bit strange, but I kind of like it, so we'll keep going. d6, a4 was played by Dominguez anyway. This is one of the moves you see a lot more often after castles than after d6. So it's a small surprise here, and Svidler sank into thought, went for the move b4 after all, which is the typical move after castles instead of d6. Here Black has some alternatives. Bishop g4 is the main line, the most often played move here, because of the threat of knight d4. White has to go c3, and after castles Black hasn't yet committed on the queen side to anything, so that's playable. Or the more humble move, bishop d7, also makes a lot of sense. All of those directed against stopping the white threat of rook a8, of ab and rook a8, of course. Bishop b7 is possible, but I never liked this square for the bishop if white can still go d3 and kind of lock it out of the game. So that's not a serious option. But Svidler decided to play the move leading to sort of familiar territory, b4 here. White goes d4. Practice has shown that slower plans with d3, knight d2 aren't that effective, so d4 is a critical test. And Black has nothing better than castles, which is played by Svidler, even though it took him like half an hour and he was very unhappy about that afterwards, that it took him so long to reach this theoretical position. And now we've transposed to a line which I studied under a different move order, castles a4, b4, d4, and d6 here. It's an important anti-martial line, so I was very curious to see these two experts go at it. Castles, d takes e5, once again the critical test. D takes e, nowadays knight takes e5 is pretty much out of fashion. I think knight bd2 is slightly unpleasant here for Black. So everybody plays d takes e, and White goes for knight bd2. This is the trendy setup. They used to try queen takes d8, play this ending a couple of years ago, but Black has shown that his defenses are very solid there. So knight bd2. Svidler, by no means a stranger to this position, had some games against Sergei Karyakin in this very line. Goes bishop c5, good move here, activating this bishop, which no longer had that much to do on e7, especially now that bishop g5 is not going to come anytime soon. This is a very complicated situation strategically. The pawn structure is close to equal, but there's some differences because of the placement of the pawns on the queen side. On the one hand, Black has grabbed some space, on the other hand, he's weakened his light squares a bit, and these pawns will often be separated from each other after a5, so they are both potential weaknesses. So the position is still quite tense strategically. It's a bit easier to play for White, but I do believe that Black has to be fine here. At least, if he's not, I have a serious repertoire problem, but I don't think that's the case. Queen e2, White typically plays the moves a5, a3 and queen e2 in one order or the other. There's some subtleties for all of them, but they tend to lead to the same position. Queen e2, queen e7, this is the best square for the queen. One important thing to keep in mind with queen e7 is always, is bishop d5 a problem or is it not? But in this move order it's not a problem because black can take it, e takes d, and go knight d4, which leads to rough equality. So queen e7, h3, started with a5, black goes h6, white goes a3, and we reach a position that is normally reached via one move order or the other. I like Svidler's next move, Rook D8. The players at the press conference weren't so sure if this was the way to go, but it is, at least according to my video series. I made a video series about the martial and the anti-martial lines, and I recommended this move as well. Rook D8, keeping black's options open. Bishop E6 is another move, but then white has some chances for an advantage after bishop C4, I believe. So Rook D8, Rook D8 was played. Bishop C4 is once again the correct move. In general, white wants his bishop on C4 and his knight on B3 here. It's a more effective setup than putting this knight on C4 when after bishop E6, black is just fine. Bishop C4 is a bit more unpleasant. It keeps an eye on the A6 pawn and bring out the knight to B3 and then bishop D2 can pose black some problems. And this is the position where Svidler plays a move I don't fully agree with. I don't think it's bad and the position remains close to equality, but I don't like it. He played the move knight D4, typical move, getting rid of this knight on C6, which is always a bit of a problem piece for black in the Ruy Lopez. But here it allows white to develop his pieces very smoothly. And I prefer the strange-looking move, rook to d6. That's what I gave in my series. Bit of a waiting move, but also an active move. In many lines, black wants to go knight h5, knight f4, and then swing the rook over to g6. And I couldn't find anything all that scary from black's point of view. Knight b3 looks logical, bishop a7, and here bishop d2 or bishop e3 are both possible. But after bishop d2, it looks like black is in time to go knight h5 and organize enough counterplay to maintain the balance here. I'm not sure, probably Dominguez disagrees with this assessment. Maybe we'll see it in practice later, but I think rook d6 is a better move than knight d4 as played by Svidler. Knight takes, bishop takes, knight b3. None of this is the end of the world, but black faces some decisions here. To my mind, still the best move here was to keep the bishop, to retreat it. I love my bishops. Play bishop a7, but I do understand that now white is a bit better after bishop d2. Bishop e3 is also possible, but bishop d2 looks quite good to me as well. Bishop b7, bishop d3. And while there's nothing too bad, it seems like the white pieces are a bit more coordinated, and it could be a bit unpleasant to be black here. Similar things could be said about the move bishop to e3. Still, I believe this was probably the way to go for black, because in the game Svidler plays a very risky move, very ambitious strategically, the move c5. First sight this looks strange because it locks in the bishop on d4, and one starts wondering if white doesn't have a way to pick this bishop up, but that doesn't seem to be the case. All attempts, like, I don't know, you would have to go rook a2, bishop d2 and c3, but white is never in time to do that, because let's say bishop e6 here, bishop d2, and there's already many tactics that work for black, mainly knight takes e4 here is good. So white is not in time to trap the bishop, but he is in time to just exchange it, and that's what Dominguez does, a very sober decision, which I think is very good. Knight takes d4, c takes d4, and black has gained some space, repaired his pawn structure to some extent, but the white position is still much easier to play. Bishop d2, white does have the two bishops, which are a factor, and more importantly, he has the option of creating play on both sides of the board. He can go after the b4 pawn by playing b3, I shouldn't mix the colors too much, by going b3, bishop d3, then let's say rook ec1 and rook to a4, attacking this guy, followed by queen e1 if necessary. And it's not going to be so easy to defend, so he has play on the queen side, and he also has play on the king side. f4 is always looming, and black has to keep an eye out for it. And there's also the option we're going to see in the game of activating the queen via f3, g3, and bringing it to h4. So I think white's position is easier to play. And it's not so easy for black to find the correct moves here. Svidler starts with a naturally enough queen to c5. White goes b3, part of the plan. And now Svidler takes a decision which I think is good, which was probably quite hard to take. He goes for bishop to e6. He understood he has to do something. Bishop takes e6 would favor black. After f takes e, black is totally fine because this is a weakness. And the white two bishops have disappeared. But white has a choice between bishop takes a6 and the move played in the game, bishop d3. Bishop a6 was interesting when queen c2 doesn't seem so strong due to bishop b7, and all of a sudden this pawn becomes a monster. But instead I think Svidler wanted to play the way he did in the game as well, we're going to see that in a minute. Play rook db8, and it turns out that white can't really extricate this bishop from a6 so easily without losing the a5 pawn. So it would probably lead to something like bishop b3, rook a5, queen a5. No, white is not forced to exchange on a5 immediately. Something like that, where white maintains a small advantage, but in general, exchanging these two pawns for each other should favor black, make his defense easier. In the game, Dominguez decided not to take on a6, but he played the move bishop d3, keeping his structure intact, and once again, aiming to go rook a4, rook ec1, queen e1, or maybe f4. And I think white is better, and Svidler once again comes up with a tough move, which I like, the move bishop to d7. Still, he understood he has to get rid of this bishop to slightly undermine white's very, very solid setup. He's intending to go bishop b5 here. Dominguez once again correctly decides he shouldn't wait for that, but now is the time to take on a6. He can't allow black to go bishop b5, which would solve his problems. Queen c2 is once again not very good, this time because of bishop takes b4, even though bishop b7 was also tempting here. But that was not Svidler's idea. He once again plays the move rook db8, very quiet move. But not only is white hard-pressed to extract his bishop from a6 once again, rook db8 also contains a threat. If white plays something careless, okay, king h1 does make sense. Let's say rook ec1, then black takes on a6, queen takes a6, and bishop b5, trapping the queen on a6. There's some way to not lose a queen with bishop b4, queen a7, but here black is better after queen d6, and this is something he could only dream about. Of course, Dominguez did not allow that possibility, and he once again played a solid good move, bishop d3, giving the pawn back, but maintaining the pluses of his position. Even though black's defense has been eased a bit by exchanging these two pawns, white still has the two bishops and options on the king side, and that's where he switches his attention by going queen f3, playing to go queen g3 and f4 in some lines, and also directly threatening to take on h6 because his knight would be undefended. So Svidler defends it with rook b6, the queen goes to g3, introducing the idea of bishop takes h6. It's not clear if this was already a threat or not. Svidler said he was intending to play rook a3 here, but then didn't go for it because of bishop h6, knight h5 and queen g5. Maybe should have gone for it anyway, because this position does not seem to be so clear. After rook takes h6, queen d8, king h7, queen takes d7. Svidler was very pessimistic about black's chances, but the computer is less pessimistic. It gives 0-0-0 as we know him after knight to f4. So maybe this was a way for black to mix it up, even though white is not forced to take on h6, of course. He could also, well, play f4, play queen h4, take on a3 is even an option. So white had ways to continue the game, but rook a3 was probably a good move. Another good move, but that's also very tough to find, was the move bishop to c8. Some advanced kind of defense against this bishop h6, because now knight h5, queen g5, rook h6. This bishop is no longer hanging on d7 after queen d8. Oh, sorry. Black should, by all means, exchange rooks here first, so you don't lose this rook after queen d8. And now rook takes h6, and here black is okay. He's winning actually, because he's not losing a piece. Queen d8, just king h7, and everything is defended. But bishop c8 is a very tough move to find, and Svidler was regretting here that he had spent so much time on the opening, so he was a bit short on time here, and he couldn't find anything better than going knight to h5, chasing this queen away, but it's being chased to a good square, queen h4, knight f6 back. But now white's advantage reaches quite serious proportions. f4, once again very logical, everything is placed correctly, so white opens the next front and undermines black's pawn structure in the center. f4, and it's getting very, very tough to hang in there. Rook takes a1, rook takes a1. Sooner or later, black has to release the tension here. Bishop to c6, trying to organize some counterplay against the e4 pawn. But white is in time to open the position in his favor. Fe, queen e5, and bishop to f4, chasing this queen away from e5. And as often, one can explain strategically white has the two bishops and dynamic options and so on, but there's always small details depending on tactics. Like here, queen e6 was Svidler's original intention, the most natural square for the queen. But white is a very, very strong reply, which Svidler saw, bishop to c7. And this completely destroys the coordination of the black camp. The rook is forced to go to b7, and now after rook a8 check, made possible because of the rook on b7, king h7, king h7 doesn't work because of e5 check, and white wins on the spot. So black would have to go knight to e8, but now his pieces are extremely clumsy. Let's say bishop c4, queen to d7, this bishop goes somewhere, bishop g3, or bishop e5, bishop g3, but the black position is just falling apart. White is way too active. Rook d8 is in the air, e5, e6 is in the air, and this is just not playable for black. So after spotting that, Svidler realized he was in trouble after bishop e4, can't go queen e6. He went all the way back to e8, which has different problems. Maybe should have compromised and gone to e7. This looks like the most resilient. When after e5, knight d5, white would be better in an ending like this, queen e7, knight e7, two bishops, d4 weak. He can go bishop d3, bishop f2, activate this rook on the a file. So white is better, but still this was by far the toughest defense, because after bishop f4, queen e8, black is in real big trouble. e5, strong move. In general, it's hard to single out one particular move by Dominguez as particularly brilliant or strong, but all his moves together, he's just very solid, well prepared in the opening, calculates the lines well, and puts pressure with his general conception. He's a very good player to follow, especially if you're a 1e4 player looking for opening ideas. This guy's always on the forefront of stuff to do. And yeah, I like his style, very classical, interesting, good style. e5, now black is in trouble. Knight d5 was played. Knight d7 was discussed as maybe being more resilient. But then white has a forced win with e6. Not easy to spot, but that's why I have computers to show that stuff. e6, fe, bishop h6, which I think the players actually discussed at the press conference as well. So knight to d5 happened, but now white, once again, plays solid, sober chess, bishop to g3, and this pawn on d4 can't be defended, so white wins a healthy pawn. There was also the flashier option, bishop h6, which according to the computer was very strong as well, gh, queen h6. The black pieces are a bit too uncoordinated to really parry white's onslaught. Seems like white is winning here. Bishop h7 is a big threat, and the sample line is bishop b7, bishop h7. Well, the queen is attacked, but bishop g6 blocks that rank. King g8, queen h7, king f8, and the key move, rook to f1, bringing in one more attacker. Black's defenses are overloaded, and he faces a pretty horrible position after rook g6, queen g6. So that was possible, but once again, Dominguez has no reason to complicate things when he's much better after bishop g3. So that's what he did, winning a clear pawn. Svidler at least used the chance to get rid of the white two bishops. Bishop b5, queen takes d4, bishop d3, cd. Now this position is tough to play. This knight might look nice on d5, but black has too many issues. The white pieces are active, he has a pawn down, and his king can very quickly become the victim of a white attack. Dominguez makes another unassuming move, which I really like, the move king to h2. Typical move, especially in time trouble, just avoiding any problems with his king on this diagonal, be it a check or be it running into a trick with the knight fork after knight c3, knight e2. It's another touch of class, these small moves. Kasparov was famous for it, getting his king out of the way before starting his final onslaught. And I think that's a quality move here, king h2. Yeah, black's position is difficult. Svidler later was very upset about the move he played here, the move rook b5. Very upset is too strong. If you know Peter Svidler, he tends not to get very upset, but he wasn't happy about it. Rook b5, points out queen b7 as more resilient, which is very true. It stops rook a7. Still, white maintains a clear advantage after, for example, queen e4. Position is very difficult for black to hold and probably objectively lost, but queen b7 would no doubt have prolonged the game. Rook b5 was played instead, with the idea of activating this rook by going rook c5 and then rook c3 or rook c2, when all of a sudden black would have serious counterplay, but he's just not in time. Rook a7, very strong move, and what Svidler missed is that now rook c5 runs into the breakthrough e6, overloading black's defenses, and black could resign here after f takes e6, queen takes g7 is mate. Queen takes e6, queen takes c5, wins a rook, and letting this pawn live is also not very tempting. So rook c5 doesn't work. Svidler tried to muddy the waters by playing h5, but Dominguez, once again, he just makes logical, strong little moves all the time, keeps putting pressure, queen e4, and here Svidler collapses, but the position was beyond repair anyway. g6 was the best according to the computer, but it does not look like it should hold. White is just a pawn up, and black has a weak king. So queen e4 instead rook c5 was played, but that once again runs into the same trick we've just seen. e6 here, different version, but just as effective. Turns out that black can't capture this pawn. F takes e6, queen g6 is a very nasty threat of queen g7 mate, which can't be parried without losing lots of material. So that doesn't work. And queen takes e6, run to rook a8 check, rook c8, queen takes e6, fe, rook takes c8 check, and white has a healthy extra rook. So after e6, Svidler did resign. No way out anymore. Yeah, pity for us Peter Svidler fans. He's still having a good tournament on +1. But I really, even though the game lacks fireworks, I liked the way Dominguez played. The overall conception, the slowly putting pressure. And I believe Svidler has some mild repair work to do in the opening after bishop c4. I'm not a huge fan of this move, knight d4. But I would have to check a bit more to see if my rook d6 really holds up, as I mentioned in my video series. Let's, before we wrap up, have a look at the standings of the tournament, if I manage to bring them up. This is always an exciting question at the end of videos. Will Jan find the standings? There they are from the official website. We see Fabiano Caruana still firmly in the lead with 5 out of 7, and Leinier Dominguez now only half a point behind, together with Sergei Karyakin. In the Grand Prix, it's not just about winning the tournament, but also about qualifying for the candidates tournament. 2 players out of the cycle qualified. This is the last event. Caruana seems like a lock by now to qualify. And the other spot is very close between Sergei Karyakin, Hikaru Nakamura, and Yevgeny Tomashevsky, who's not having a great tournament, with Boris Gelfand also having some outsider chances. So this race will be exciting to follow. And yeah, we'll stay tuned, and of course hoping for Peter Svidler to make a comeback in this tournament. Well, not a comeback, he's doing well, but to play for the top spots. Thank you guys for watching, share the video, tell everybody about it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.